with that down, we're going to kind of do a breaking news kind of thing here. We didn't have this one planned, guys. This one's not in the show notes. So these guys don't even know what we're going to talk about. As film fans, we all know there are good movies, and then there are bad movies. And then there are Sony Spider-Verse movies. Not counting the Venom films, not counting the Across the Spider. You know what? Sony does make some really good stuff. They do. But they've made some horrible things. Madam Web, Morbius, and now, worst of them all, Kraven. And, you know, we talked the other day about how, you know what, it's just sometimes they just make these films because they need to have a film put out in order to maintain control of the Spider-Verse films. And they don't even need all of them to make money because when they hit so big that, believe it or not, this is a statistical fact, guys. You can deny it all you want, but it's true. When you count all the Sony Spider-Man movies that Sony has made since the first Venom, and that includes Madam Web, Morbius, Kraven, the 3 Venom films, the Spider-Verse films, Sony's profitable. It's true. You can deny it. You can be like Luke hanging on with one hand going, no, that's impossible. You can do that if you want. Sony's movies overall are profitable. It's just crazy to think about. But we can talk about, you know, why maybe some of these ones like Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven, why are these ones so bad? You know, this, that, and the other thing. Well, Sony's CEO seems to have a different opinion as to why those movies failed.
You didn't think I'd have that picture ready, did you?
No, I didn't. Well done. See, Sony's CEO doesn't think they failed because they weren't well thought out. He doesn't think they failed because they made bad movies. He doesn't think they failed because as they continue to make bad movies, their reputation gets worse and people stop getting interested. Nope. When all else fails, blame the critics. Yup. Bet you guys didn't know this, but Madam Web, Morbius, and Kraven were actually pretty good movies, and they would have done fine if it weren't for those meddling kids, the film critics. This is coming to us from Variety. Right, Sony Pictures CEO says Madam Web flopped because the press crucified it. Our Marvel movies are not terrible films. Yes, they fucking are. At least Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven.
But there was a Morbius re-release.
Yeah, I mean, like, how could that not be good? They were destroyed by critics. All right, let's read what this moron has to say. And listen, this is breaking my heart because you guys know I am a Sony defender. Hey, listen, I acknowledge when they drop the ball, but I'm also quick to point out when everybody wants to ignore when they actually carry the ball across the goal line. Everybody just wants to focus on the negative, and I acknowledge the negative, but I'm always got to be the one to step and say, guys, don't forget they also did this and this and this, and these things worked, and these things like, so I, to some degree, am a Sony defender in many circumstances, certainly not all. But for this guy to come out and say this makes him look so out of touch and in such denial that it erodes my confidence that they can steer the ship in the right direction. Anyway, this is what the article in Variety. I'm reading this for the first time, guys, by the way. It says this, Sony Pictures CEO Tony Vinciquerra, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, no disrespect intended, recently told the Los Angeles Times that Kraven the Hunter is probably the worst launch we had. No, I did the maths, and the maths say it was the worst launch you had. Not probably, it was. He says probably the worst launch we had in the nearly 8 years he's been at the studio, adding, I still don't understand because the film is not a bad film. Let's pause for a moment. Tony, all film is subjective. There are people out there who like Kraven, and I have all the respect in the world for that because different things work for different people. That being said, that it is perfectly fine if you think it's not a bad film. I'm sure there are people watching this who thought Kraven wasn't a bad film. That's great because all films are subjective. Your opinion is no more and no less valid than mine. But if you talk to a lot of film fans, Tony, Kraven was a bad film. Not to everybody, and that's fair. But to a lot of us, as to some of us who were cheering, who spent the last year cheering for this film, believing in this film. I got on my show dozens of times saying, you know what, guys, I think we might be selling Kraven a little short. I spent a year in denial.
I was like, what? You didn't see that coming?
Yeah, well, you didn't see that coming. I like saying, you know what, guys? Hey, they've actually got a much better director than Morbius and Madam Web had. They have a much better writer than Morbius and Madam Web had. And you know, you got Aaron Taylor Johnson agreeing to it, and he's got his pick of roles right now. By the way, he's also in Nosferatu. He's got 28 Years Later coming out. He was awesome in Bullet Train. And it's like, you know what, guys? I think that we're selling Kraven a little short. I think Kraven could be good. I'm looking forward to Kraven. And then they lost the first 8 minutes. I'm like, you know what? Those were good. That's a good first 8 minutes. Yay, Kraven. And then you betrayed me. You betrayed me by offering up one of the worst pieces of cinematic shit I have ever seen. And I say this as your defender, Tony. So anyway, let's continue reading Tony's thesis. Now, Kraven opened in theaters December 13th to a paltry $11 million, the lowest debut yet for a Sony-released Marvel movie. The movie's current domestic box office total stands Quel Supri at just $18 million, while its global haul is $43 million, worldwide total. These are more or less catastrophic results for a superhero movie and cap off a lackluster year for Sony comic book films after Madam Web flopped with $100 million worldwide and Venom: The Last Dance became the franchise's lowest grossing entry. It does need to be said, though, that Venom: The Last Dance, while I didn't particularly like it, it is a profitable movie. It's closing in on $500 million.
It's awesome.
So, I mean, good for them. So I got to give credit where credit's due. But yeah, he said this. This is Tony. Let's just touch on Madam Web for a moment. Tony said, Madam Web underperformed in the theaters because the press just crucified it. It was not a bad film. Tony, stop living in denial. Somebody organized an intervention because yes, it fucking was a bad film. All right? Anyway, it was not a bad film and it did great on Netflix. Because that's now the measurement? People just clicking on something for free that costs them nothing?
To hate watch it?
That's the measurement? Anyway, for some reason, the press decided that they didn't want us making these films out of Kraven and Madam Web, and the critics just destroyed them. They also did it with Venom, but the audience loved Venom and made Venom a massive hit. Hey, listen, I'm a Venom fan. I'm a Venom fan. These are not terrible films. Venom wasn't terrible. They were just destroyed by the critics in the press for some reason.
But he says right there, they did it to Venom too, but the audience liked Venom, so it did well. So what's the missing ingredient, Tony?
So, hey, Tony, if it's all the critics' fault, but the audience knew a good film when they saw it.
This is the worst gaslighting.
And still had it make money, then why didn't that happen with Madam Web?
He's so bad at gaslighting.
Why didn't that? That's what this is. This is corporate gaslighting. Why didn't it happen with Morbius? Morbius was so good. Why didn't the audience just see through the crucifixion the critics were putting on it like they did with Venom and went out and support it? The common denominator here is a suck dick movie. It's an awful, awful movie. And I'll tell you what, nothing frustrates me more. Nothing frustrates me more. And this goes all the way back to my movie blog days. When a filmmaker, a director, a producer, or a studio head blame their failures either on the audience or the critics. It's their fault. No, it fucking wasn't. It was your fault. You put out substandard product with substandard planning, not reading the room, not doing market demographic research, and just put out and just made crap and then sat down and said, that's good enough. Ship it. It's not the audience's fault. It's not the critics' fault. And again, I want to remind everybody, I'm saying this as one of the guys who fucking defends Sony. I'm the guy who keeps pointing out when they do things right when everybody else wants to ignore it. So Tony, as a guy who has theoretically been on your side, you're an idiot. This is asinine. Just step up to the plate and say, you know what? These weren't our best efforts. See, that's what you say, Jonathan. Mm-hmm. That's what a leader does. A leader will step up and say, you know what? We didn't have the best of years.
Yeah.
We kind of swung and missed on these ones. These weren't our best efforts. So we are committed to going back to the drawing board, and we're going to make sure our upcoming product, whether it's Beyond the Spider-Verse, whether it's Spider-Man Noir, or whether it's their co-production with Marvel with Spider-Man 4, and saying we're going to go back, we didn't give our best efforts this year, so we're going to go back to the drawing board, and we're committed to making sure we learn from our mistakes, and we're going to put out really good product. Instead of doing that,
and it's strange,
he gets up and says, this is the critics' fault.
Yeah. And it was like, it's the critics' fault, but they didn't like Venom either, but at least the audience liked it. So what does that tell you about the audience for the other films? Dude, you can't just tell us like, if you had liked it, it would have done better. No crap. We didn't like it. It's not our fault we didn't like it. It's your guys' fault.
And listen, you know what? Had he come out and said what I just mentioned, hey, you know what? We didn't put out our best product this year. You know what that would have done to me? For me, as a fan of films and a fan of some of the product that they have put out, it would have made me feel better. Like, okay, hey, they recognize they dropped the ball. That gives me some faith as a fan that they're going to be able to go back to the drawing board. Like when a team loses a game, like let's say the Lakers lose a game and LeBron's being interviewed. He doesn't go up to the mic and say, well, the fans just didn't cheer loud enough, Jimmy.
Yeah, they weren't there for us.
The fans weren't there for us. If the fans had been there for us, maybe I could have sunk a few more threes. No, what happens is, whether it's a LeBron James or whether it's Steph Curry or whether it's any of these guys, you hear LeBron James, when they lose a game, he'll go up and the first thing he'll talk about is what they did wrong. We didn't do this. I didn't execute this. We didn't do that. And then you get the sense that this is somebody who knows what they're doing. They're going to make these adjustments. They're going to win. And, the Lakers did win on Christmas Day yesterday. Thrilling finish to a thrilling game. But instead, this asshat has just come out and not only humiliated himself with such an idiotic statement, it has made even somebody like me, who has been the one holding out some hope for Sony, it's totally eroded my faith in him, his company, and their products. Because now I'm looking at it and saying, wait a minute, time out.
Yeah.
You're looking at Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven, and your assessment, your leadership assessment of the situation is that the reason those films failed wasn't because you put out substandard product. No. You believe you put out good product. The problem was that the critics took it apart. As the leader, that is your assessment. If that is your assessment as the leader, why should I believe for one fucking second that you have any competence of steering this ship in the right direction if you don't even recognize where you went wrong? Because making a good movie ain't easy. We'll forgive. We as audiences will forgive a few bad movies because we know making good movies ain't good or isn't easy. But if you as the leader of the company, you're telling me that you are so clueless that you don't even recognize the wrong turns you made, you don't even recognize the missteps you made, then why the hell should I have any faith that you have the competence to lead this company to making better product? I have no more faith in you. Because you just showed you have no clue. You are so detached from reality. It's insane.
Yeah. To me, I can't make any accusations because I don't know, but it just kind of sounds like Tony may have had, I don't know, performance escalators written into his clause, and maybe they didn't hit those escalators and he missed out on a big payday, and so now he's looking to take it out on me,
looking for
El Guapo.
scapegoats?
And it's just like, is that what this is about? Are you bitter because you didn't get your escalator pay raise bonus? It's just like, because last week when we talked about this and they had that stupid rumor about Sony's all done with the Spider-Verse stuff, they're not doing anymore. When all they said, and they literally said this in the article, we're going to take a step back on these products. We're going to right the ship. We're going to pour more quality and time into these things and release better product. And then the very next week, maybe it's 2 weeks because it was a Christmas week, this guy comes out and it's almost like a reaction to that. Like, no, this is the critics' fault. This is the audience fault.
And you know what? Let's juxtapose this for a second against another leader, Big Papa Iger. Let's compare how a Bob Iger responds. When Star Wars or whatever, Marvel or whatever has a disappointing stretch, Bob Iger comes out and says, "Hey, you know what? We did this wrong. We prioritize quantity over quality in this thing." Back in the day before he stepped down and before Bob Chapek, talking about some of the Star Wars stuff, he goes, "You know what? I think maybe we need to take a step back. We need to evaluate what we're doing." Listen, you may not love every step that and everything that Star Wars has put out while under the Disney banner, sure. But at least when you then look at the leadership, they're like, yeah, they're acknowledging, we dropped the ball here. You know what? Acolyte sucks. So they came out quickly and said, we're not going to do a season 2. When Bob Iger came back and realized like all the kind of step backwards that the Marvel Cinematic Universe took, he said, look, we have prioritized quantity over quality. Again, it may not be all the right things, but it's at least a leader stepping up and saying the problems we're having are a result of mistakes that we have made, as opposed to this guy saying, the causes, the root of the problems and the failures we have suffered ain't our fault. We put out good movies. We were attacked by those nasty critics. It's their fault that we failed. Ask me which one I'm going to be willing to put the next $100 of stock into. The leader that said, hey, these problems that we had, a result of our mistakes. Or the leader that goes, no, it's critics' mistakes. I'm going to put a lot more faith in the leader that says that. Whether you like Disney or not, whether you like Bob Iger or not, tell me you wouldn't rather take that over this. Anyway, this is always something that's infuriated me when a director, producer, or studio blames either the audience or the critics for their own mistakes. And I mean, thankfully, this guy's stepping down. He's going to be stepping down, I think, rather soon. I think he's on his way out. Thank God.
That adds another layer to my bitterness theory. Then, I think they had some strong discussions behind closed doors.
Yeah. Anyway, so guys, question is for you: what do you think of Tony's little comments? Maybe you agree with it. And listen, by the way, all film is subjective. If you like Madam Web and you like Morbius and you like Kraven, there is nothing wrong with that. If you watch those and you enjoyed them, that's great. But I think even you would have to acknowledge there are enough people that hated those films that it isn't somebody else's fault they failed. It's Sony's fault. Anyway, whatever you guys think about this, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.